The fortunate among us travel down many roads, each leg of the journey filled with joy and meaning. That includes Herb Spaugh. In a life that began 92 years ago in a happy home above his father's church in Charlotte, North Carolina, his story reads like the great adventure it was. Early on, he learned the value of hard work, pumping gas at service stations and working as a cashier in the school cafeteria. He showed his artistic and faithful side as the youngest member of the Moravian church band. He showed his feisty side, learning how to box. He embraced his college years at Davidson and then UNC Chapel Hill. Herb served his country as a pilot in the United States Air Force. He served his community as an insurance executive, financial planner, and member of Charlotte City Council. The son of a Moravian pastor, he served the Lord in many ways. That includes starting the Bishop's Fund to support ministers with continuing education and their children's college expenses, and financially supporting divinity students. Herb traveled the world. He was an accomplished pilot in his civilian years and an ardent sailor. He collected antique cars that filled 2 garages and antique clocks that filled his lake home with a symphony of chimes. When he turns on his electric trains, he's a kid again. Best of all, because family is where life begins and ends, he was privileged to share this journey with 2 daughters and the love of his life. Herb and Susan Spaugh were married on June 6, 1981. They both were born on June 6th, though not in the same year. 2 birthdays and a wedding. What a day to rejoice. Fast forward 41 years. It's springtime 2022. Herb and Susan welcome filmmakers to their home on Lake Norman. It's time for Herb to tell his story, to capture it for all time, that others who come after might be inspired. Herb suffered a stroke Labor Day 2021 that requires him to use a walker, golf cart, and in-house elevator to get around. Minor details, for his mind, heart, and spirit remain strong. The words and memories come a bit slower, but they still come.
As I have matured, I don't get older, I'm just maturing.
So here is Herb Spaugh's story in all its glory, told not to brag, but to recount an extraordinary life. May we learn from a journey built upon a calling that has sustained him and graced us. Herbert Rufus Spaugh, Jr. was born June 6, 1930, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the middle of Bishop Herb and Ida Spaugh's 3 children. Herb's father was pastor of Little Church on the Lane, the Moravian congregation in Charlotte. That explains Herb's early years spent living above the chapel, happily, as he is quick to recall. Way back when in Charlotte, they raised chickens, chopped firewood, and grew a garden. His older brother Earl and younger sister Carolyn, both now gone, were the perfect playmates. The elder Herb Spaugh was an awesome role model. He never had a drink of alcohol because he saw what it could do to people. He helped establish Alcoholics Anonymous and was school board chairman at one time. From his parents came the younger Herb's passion for quietly helping others.
I just figured if I can help people live a better life, I'd like to do that. And if God has given me the ability to do that, I just get a big kick out of helping people.
Herb was a good child. He even earned his Eagle Scout. Such fun he had. As the youngest member of the Moravian church band founded by his father, he played horn, including at the popular Easter sunrise service. How better to sound forth the majesty of God than with brass? Of all things, he became a pretty fair boxer, competing in the Golden Gloves.
Did you like to box?
Yeah.
What'd you like about it?
Hitting on people.
He rode go-karts on Moravian Lane near his dad's church. He was 17 when his dad bought him his first car, a Model T. That led to his lifelong love of cars, specifically antique cars.
It was a fun family. I had an older brother and a younger sister, and nice neighbors across the road. We had a very happy family, and always doing things together. Wonderful parents. I look back on the things they used to do, and part of the things I thank for him daily is his patience. I mean, he put up with a lot, both of them did, put up with a lot of patience, especially with me, I was a typical preacher's kid that just did not behave like I should.
His first girlfriend came in first grade.
Barbara Nisbet. She was we played together on the first grade, and we'd go work in the yard, and I would go play soldier, and he'd get my tin hat out.
His schooling took him from Eastover Elementary to Alexander Graham Middle to Central High to Davidson College, and finally to Chapel Hill. His college years were something to recall. There was a lot of learning and maturing, of course. He pledged Kappa Sig at Davidson, following his older brother Earl, and missed Phi Beta Kappa by a fraction of a point on his GPA.
My daddy said, "You're not going to Carolina, you're going to Davidson." Back then, what Daddy said, you did. There was no disputing about that. And it ended up that I really enjoyed Davidson. Down at Davidson, we had this sort of rule that you spoke to everybody. If you saw somebody and they caught their eye, you spoke to them. You didn't do it. When I went to Chapel Hill, all that stopped, and I'd go speak to somebody, and he'd look at me sort of funny, like, "What's wrong with you?" But after I moved into the fraternity house down at Chapel Hill, things changed around, and I got to really enjoy that and got to know a lot of people down there.
There were also the stories that add color to a life, like the slot machine he kept in his room at Carolina, and the poker games that took place in the basement.
Well, I had a slot machine. That was when I was living in the fraternity house. I had a slot machine, and I kept it in my room, and all my buddies would come in and be working on the slot machine. Of course, I was making money on it. Of course, I couldn't sleep because they'd come in all night long with my slot machine.
After graduating first in his U.S. Air Force flight training class, he went to flight school in Kinston, North Carolina. He flew reconnaissance and cargo planes and traveled all over the world with the Air Force. He flew over Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. He lived all over, including in France, Greece, and Italy. His younger daughter Renee was born in an army hospital in France. They say about Herb that he had the good fortune to break down in the world's most desirable locations. He especially loved Greece and Italy for the people and the food. In Italy, a nice woman taught him how to roll his pasta on a fork.
They give you spaghetti for everything in Italy. And so I was sitting there eating my spaghetti. This lady came up and says, no, you don't do it that way. She says, sit behind you, put your feet around like that, and turn around and round like that.
In piloting planes, he found a way to express his spirit of adventure and also to serve the greater good. In all, he was part of ROTC, spent 4 years in the Air Force, 18 months with the Secret Service taking reconnaissance photos, and 25 years with the North Carolina Air National Guard. He continued flying well into his civilian years. To this day, he misses being at the controls, up in the clouds, looking down at this good earth. After his military service, Herb returned to Charlotte, where his family bought a home on Addison Drive. With his first wife, he raised 2 daughters, Sharon and Renee. He also bought a Carolina blue Cadillac convertible, a hint of cool cars to come. Starting in 1957, he found his calling and a way to help people. He became a life insurance agent and financial planner for Connecticut Mutual.
Well, it's a wonderful business. You can help a lot of people that way. That thing you could do you could control by the amount of work you did, how much you worked, how hard you worked, how much time you worked.
He spent a lifetime supporting his family in this field. In fact, in his first year, he made the $1 Million Round Table and was the leading Connecticut mutual agent in Mecklenburg County. Thanks to his gift for building relationships, Herb grew his business and was elected to Charlotte City Council in 1979.
I was on the city council because a good friend of mine was a guy in Charlotte, Pat Hunter. We were sitting one afternoon just talking, and he said, I said, Pat, why don't you go to the city council, because they just don't do like we like them to do. He said, why don't you go? So we argued back and forth a little bit. And finally he said, I'll tell you what, we'll flip a coin and see who goes. And whoever loses has to go. So we ended up, I lost.
Herb wound up serving 6 years on city council. Of his tenure, he recalls lobbying for a coliseum to be built uptown to spur Center City growth. It eventually was, but only after a stop on Tyvola Road. The best moments in life are the unexpected ones. Herb Spaugh and the former Susan Linfesti met on a blind date. A successful businessman and community leader by this point, he and his first wife had divorced. Susan was a CPA who knew Herb only by the column his father, Bishop Spaugh, wrote in the Charlotte Observer.
I had gone to a tax seminar. They were just starting computerized tax forms, and was with an attorney friend of his, and this attorney friend of his and his partner badgered him into calling me up for a date. We went out to, well, he took me by his best friend, Dr. Billy Stallworth, I guess, so I could pass inspection to make sure that I met with his approval.
40 years later, Herb and Susan recall that their first date was dinner at Slug Steakhouse, a landmark back in the day. Or at least they think it was there. That was so many years ago. Soon after, Herb took Susan sailing.
It was a really interesting sailing experience. I learned that sailing is 90% work, 10% sailing.
That date, though nobody's fault, turned into a comedy of sailing errors too numerous to recount here. It didn't matter. They were married on June 6, 1981. He is 17 years her senior, but that never really mattered. They are equals, partners, and friends. There is mutual respect.
I think we don't fight too bad.
No, we probably fought a lot more when we were younger than we do now, so yeah. We're both sort of strong-willed people.
Yeah.
That might be an understatement.
Later in life, she has learned to master the role of caregiver and encourager.
Yeah, we're more in a caregiving stage of life now. So,
Very kind of you to say that.
unfortunately, not wine so much anymore because it just doesn't.
But I think I drank my share. Because Lord, oh me,
Yeah, I think he did.
I love my wine.
Probably had his share in the earlier part of his life, so he used up his quota.
Theirs is a mixed marriage, quote unquote. He was Moravian. She was Methodist. That was an easy fix. They belong to Myers Park United Methodist Church, where both are active. God has graced this phase of Herb's life. First and foremost, he and Susan have each other to enjoy life on Lake Norman, a lovely, peaceful spot. Spend 5 minutes in their home, and all those chimes sounding forth speak to his antique clock collection, 128 at one time, one dating back to the 1700s, all of them distinct, many worth a pretty penny.
I sort of got that over from Daddy, I guess. He carried it over from him. And I found another one. We used to go to these clock auctions, and I found one over here I sort of liked, and one over there I liked. And And poor little Susan get tired of going winding them up.
He's only too happy to get on his golf cart and show visitors the 4 antique cars in their garage, including a sporty 1952 Mercedes.
I just like cars, and I bought them, and I was in the habit of not selling anybody. I just held on to them. I still have 4 or 5 of them up there now.
A fellow from one of the nearby NASCAR race teams comes over and, quote-unquote, exercises the cars. Herb is quick to get on the in-house elevator and meet you in the room that houses his elaborate electric trains. These aren't your grandfather's Lionel trains. Herb runs them by computer. A man and his toys. For as long as God gives him, still a boy at heart. A needlepoint in their home sums up Herb to a T. Old sailors never die. They just lose their wind. So how to capture the essence of Herb Spaugh's life? After all the accomplishments, good deeds, and plane flights, after the last clock chimes, with Susan by his side, how does Herb sum it all up?
Well, I love people. I just have always loved people, and you can say something good about almost everything, and you can make something good out about everything. And that was just part of me. I just like people. I like talking to people and like learning from people. I think people that don't enjoy other people are missing an awful lot. Hopefully it's something that I've been able to help somebody else, or attribute to something that's worthwhile or done good for somebody or something. Every time I wake up, I'm just very grateful I'm still here. But I don't feel like I'm not a young chicken running around here, but I feel like I got still some poof in me.
He does bring up Ken Poe's name, though. But he says,
About the what?
I said, you do bring up Ken Poe's name, though, on occasion.
Well, he's a nice guy.